AITA for refusing to use my personal savings to pay off my parents' secret home equity loan after they spent years bragging about their debt-free luxury. The crystal chandelier in the dining room of my parents' home has always felt less like a light fixture and more like a statement of victory. It is massive, overly ornate, and casts a sharp, unyielding glare over the custom mahogany table below it. For the last 7 years, that table has been the stage for my father's favorite recurring performance, the sermon of the self-made man, the secret to a peaceful life. Clara is total financial autonomy, my father said, swirling his expensive Cabernet and looking at me with that familiar, patronizing warmth. Look at your mother and me. We retired at 55. No mortgages, no car payments, no credit debt, total debt-free luxury. When you don't owe the world a dime, you don't have to bow to anyone. I kept my eyes fixed on my plate, cutting my steak with measured precision. Beside me, my husband David offered a tight, polite smile. We had heard this speech at least 50 times. Every Sunday dinner for nearly a decade was a masterclass in how my parents had outsmarted the modern economy. They traveled to Europe twice a year, drove matching luxury SUVs, and frequently dropped condescending remarks about our unfortunate choice to live in a modest 3-bedroom suburban home while prioritizing our personal savings and index funds. Yeah. Kids carry too much anxiety, my mother chimed in, adjusting her diamond tennis bracelet. You're always working, always budgeting. Life is meant to be lived beautifully. If you just managed your money the way your father does, you wouldn't be trapped in that little starter house. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth and said nothing. I am a 29-year-old senior data analyst. David and I earn a fantastic collective income, but we live well below our means. We don't have luxury cars or designer clothes because we have spent the last 6 years building a fortress of a savings account. Over $115,000 meticulously scraped together, meant to be the down payment on our forever home and a safety net for our 5-year-old son, Leo. To my parents, our discipline was just proof that we lacked their sophisticated financial instinct. The illusion didn't crack slowly. It shattered in a single afternoon. 2 days ago, my father called me at work. His voice, usually booming and bulletproof, sounded thin, reedy, and entirely unfamiliar. He asked me to meet him at a quiet cafe downtown during my lunch break. He explicitly told me not to tell David and not to bring my mother. When I arrived, he was sitting in the corner booth, staring into a cold cup of black coffee. The immaculate, wealthy patriarch was gone. In his place sat an old man whose hands were visibly trembling. "Clara," he whispered, not even looking up as I sat down, "I need you to do something for me, and you cannot tell your mother. If she finds out, her heart won't take it." My stomach dropped. I immediately thought of a terminal medical diagnosis or an accident. "Dad, what is it? Are you sick?" "No," he choked out, finally looking at me with red, bloodshot eyes. "It's the house. The bank is initiating foreclosure proceedings. The balloon payment on the secondary equity facility is due in 3 weeks. It's $92,000, Clara. If we don't pay it, they are going to seize the property." I sat frozen in the vinyl booth, the ambient noise of the cafe completely fading into static. "What secondary facility?" "Dad, you told the entire family the house was paid off in 2018. You told everyone you were completely debt-free." He buried his face in his hands, a low, pathetic sound escaping his throat. And then the ugly, systematic truth poured out. They weren't financial geniuses. They hadn't retired early on savvy investments. When my father's consulting firm collapsed 7 years ago, instead of downsizing, adjusting their lifestyle, or telling the truth, they chose to manufacture a lie. They took out a massive, high-interest home equity line of credit, HELOC, with a predatory interest-only structure and a massive principal balloon payment waiting at the end of the term. They had used the equity of their childhood home as a personal ATM to fund their debt-free luxury. The European vacations, the luxury SUVs, the diamond bracelets, and the patronizing dinners. It was all paid for by slowly liquidating the roof over their heads. All while using that very fake wealth to look down on my husband and me for being responsible. "We just need $92,000 to clear the principal and reset the mortgage," my father pleaded, reaching across the table to grab my forearm with a desperate, sweaty grip. "I know you and David have been hoarding cash for a house. Your mother mentioned it. You have the money, Clara. You can save us. I'll pay you back, I swear, every dime. Just don't let them take our home." I stared at my father's hand on my arm, feeling a profound, cold sense of detachment. The man who had spent the last 7 years calling me anxious, small-minded, and overly cautious for keeping a strict budget was now begging me to empty my life savings to ensure his pride. "You used your home equity to buy a luxury SUV?" "Dad," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, completely devoid of the panic he was exhibiting. "We had an image to maintain, Clara," he snapped, a brief, ugly flash of his usual defensive arrogance breaking through his despair. "Do you have any idea what it's like to work 40 years just to tell your peers you failed at the end of it? We deserved a comfortable retirement. We just had a bad run with the market. If you don't help us, we lose everything. Everything we built." "No," I corrected him, pulling my arm away from his grip. "You didn't build it. You borrowed it, and you lied to everyone while doing it." I stood up from the table, my lunch untouched, left him sitting alone in the booth, and walked back to my office in a state of hyper-focused, icy clarity. I didn't hide it from David. The moment I got home that evening, I sat him down and laid out the entire diagnostic of my parents' financial fraud. David listened in absolute, stunned silence. When I finished, his jaw was set, his knuckles white against his knees. For years, David had quietly swallowed their condescending remarks about his career and our modest lifestyle, just to keep the peace. "They want our down payment," payment, David said, his voice dropping into a flat, dangerous register. They want the money we sacrificed our 20s to build, the money meant to buy a backyard for our son, so they can keep driving Lexuses and pretending they're better than us. They're not getting a single dime, I replied. The boundary was set, but I knew the social execution was coming. My father didn't respect my private no. The moment he realized I wasn't going to quietly compliance test my way into liquidating my family's future, he did exactly what every covert narcissist does when their image is threatened. He weaponized the family network. It happened yesterday afternoon at my grandmother's 85th birthday celebration, a catered garden party that my parents had insists on hosting at their country club, likely paid for with the final remaining credit limit on their depleted cards. I was standing near the buffet line, holding Leo's hand when my mother approached me. Her face was pale beneath her heavy makeup, her eyes sharp and venomous. She didn't look like a mother. She looked like an operative executing a coordinated ambush. Your father told me what you said at the cafe. Clara, she hissed, her voice low enough to escape the ears of the nearby relatives, but loud enough to pierce right through me. I have never been more disgusted in my life. We gave you everything. We gave you a beautiful childhood. We helped you with your college textbooks. And now you're going to sit on a pile of cash like a dragon while your father and I are thrown onto the street? You're not being thrown onto the street, Mom, I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, refusing to let her bait me into a public scene. You have 2 luxury vehicles with clear equity, a collection of high-end jewelry, and a country club membership. You can sell the assets, liquidate the luxury items, downsize to a realistic apartment, and pay off your own debts. Those are our personal belongings, she spat, her face flushing deep crimson. We are 62 years old, Clara. We are not going to live like college students in some cheap apartment because our own daughter is too greedy to help her parents. Family handles things internally. You have the money sitting there doing nothing. It's disgusting selfishness. Before I could answer, my Aunt Karen, my mother's fiercely loyal, dramatic older sister, stepped into our circle, holding a glass of champagne and looking at me with an expression of pure, self-righteous judgment. Is everything all right here, Evelyn? Karen asked, her eyes locking onto mine. Because your mother looks like she's about to faint, Clara. I hope you aren't bringing your little corporate attitude into this family event. The trap had officially snapped shut. My parents had already primed the extended family, painting me as the cold, calculating, wealthy daughter who was actively choosing to watch her aging parents suffer out of sheer malice. The tension in the manicured garden of the country club felt like an approaching storm. Aunt Karen stood shoulder to shoulder with my mother, her posture rigid with that classic, unearned family entitlement that I had spent my entire life trying to escape. Clara is just explaining to me how her bank accounts are more important than her father's dignity, my mother said, her lower lip trembling beautifully as she produced a silk handkerchief from her designer handbag. It was a flawless performance, perfectly calibrated for the audience around us. Are you serious, Clara? Aunt Karen gasped, her voice intentionally rising in pitch to draw the attention of my cousins who were standing near the bar. After everything your parents have done for you, they built this family, they hosted every holiday. They showed you what success looks like, and you're going to be this cold-hearted because of a little financial rough patch? It's not a rough patch, Karen, I said, stepping forward, refusing to yield an inch of ground, and it's not my debt. My parents spent 7 years lying to every person at this party about their debt-free luxury, while secretly leveraging their house to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Now that the bill is due, they want me to compromise my son's future to fund their vanity. The answer is no. You are a selfish, ungrateful little girl, my mother whispered, her mask of sorrow slipping, revealing a raw, ugly desperation. We made you who you are. If you don't help us by next week, your father and I are going to tell the entire family exactly what kind of monster you really are. We will make sure you don't have a single relative left who will speak your name. You don't have to wait until next week, Mom, I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket, because I've already done the paperwork for you. The room seemed to drop in temperature. My husband David walked over from the lawn, holding Leo in his arms, his face a mask of absolute unshakable resolve. He stood right beside me, a physical barrier between my mother's hostility and our family. That morning, before we even drove to the country club, I had spent 3 hours with a forensic accountant and a real estate contact. I knew my father's accountant brain would try to stall, so I had pulled the public property records and the public foreclosure notices that were already registered against their deed. I had printed out a clean, objective list of local independent financial counselors, along with 3 active, highly rated real estate listings for beautiful, modest 2-bedroom senior townhomes in an affordable suburb 40 minutes away. I reached into my purse, pulled out a sealed manila envelope, and pressed it firmly into my mother's diamond-clad hands. Inside this envelope is a complete list of downsizing options, I said, my voice cutting through the ambient chatter of the party like glass. There are contact numbers for liquidation auctioneers who can appraise your jewelry and vehicles, and a real estate agent who specializes in short sales to save whatever remaining equity you have left before the bank seizes the structure. David and I are willing to pay for the professional moving truck, and we will personally spend our weekend packing your boxes. We will help you downsize. We will help you transition to a realistic life, but we will not give you a single dollar of our cash to fund a lie. My mother looked down at the envelope as if I had handed her a dead animal. Her fingers shook against the paper. Aunt Karen let out a sharp, theatrical scoff, but I noticed her eyes darted toward the surrounding tables. Several of my cousins were now staring openly, the illusion of my parents' bulletproof wealth beginning to to crack under the weight of the physical documents in my mother's hands. "You are dead to me." "Clara," my mother hissed, her voice cracking as she stepped backward, clutching the envelope against her chest. "Don't you ever bring your family to my house again?" "You don't have a house anymore, Mom," I said quietly. "You have 3 weeks to face reality, or the bank will face it for you." The fallout from that afternoon was swift, digital, and absolute. By Sunday evening, my phone had become a battlefield of family judgment. My parents didn't use the downsizing information I gave them. Instead, they launched a full-scale emotional scorched earth campaign across the family network. My cousin Megan sent me a screenshot of a lengthy, dramatic message my mother had posted to the extended family group chat, the 30-person network of aunts, uncles, and distant relatives. With an absolute broken heart, Richard and I have to let everyone know that we are being forced to sell our beautiful family home due to an unexpected corporate financial crisis. We approached our daughter Clara for a temporary short-term loan from her substantial savings, but she completely refused, stating that our housing stability is not her problem. We are devastated by her lack of compassion and love during our darkest hour. Please pray for our family during this incredibly painful transition. The social trap was officially executed. Within hours, my voicemail was full of messages from distant aunts calling me heartless, calculating, and materialistic. My own brother, who lives across the country and has spent his entire adult life relying on my parents for financial bailouts, called me screaming, accusing me of ruining our parents' retirement because I wanted to buy a bigger house for myself. "Do you see what they're doing?" David said, walking into our kitchen where I sat staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. He set a hot mug of tea in front of me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "They are trying to humiliate you into compliance. They think if the family shame is heavy enough, you'll write the check just to make the messages stop." "I know," I whispered, the weight of the collective rejection pressing down on my chest. For a split second, a tiny, weak part of my brain, the little girl who had spent her life trying to earn her father's approval, wanted to just give them the money. I wanted the quiet. I wanted the Sunday dinners back, even if they were fake. But then I looked up at the wall calendar, where we had circled the date for our upcoming mortgage pre-approval meeting. I thought about the 6 years of packed lunches, the deferred vacations, the long hours David and I had put in while my parents were drinking wine in Tuscany on borrowed money. If I gave them that $92,000, it wouldn't fix their problem. It would just buy them another year of the lie, and our savings would be gone forever. "I'm not caving, David," I said, my voice hardening. "But I'm not going to let them control the narrative either." I didn't reply to the group chat with an emotional defense. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up the public county court portal, and downloaded the official certified PDF of the foreclosure filing against my parents' property. The document clearly detailed the timeline. The loan had been taken out in 2019. The interest-only payments had been neglected for 6 months, and the total principal balloon was the result of years of lifestyle spending, not an unexpected corporate crisis. I took a deep breath, opened the family group chat, and uploaded the legal PDF file directly into the message thread. Below it, I typed a single, calm, transparent response. "I love my parents, and David and I have officially offered to pay for their moving costs, hire a professional liquidation service for their luxury assets, and help them transition into a beautiful, affordable senior living townhome that fits their actual retirement income. However, we will not be liquidating our personal savings, which are dedicated to our son's future and our first home, to pay off a secret, high-interest lifestyle loan that was taken out years ago to fund an image of wealth. We are ready to help them downsize the moment they are ready to accept reality. But we will not enable the financial deception any longer." I hit send. The digital silence that followed was immediate, heavy, and absolute. The frantic typing indicators from my aunts and cousins stopped instantly. The legal document sat there on the screen, a cold, unyielding monument of truth that completely dismantled my mother's performance in a matter of seconds. The commercial moving van backed into my parents' driveway exactly 26 days after the confrontation at the country club. The gray morning air was thick with mist, dampening the brick facade of the house I had grown up in. There were no screaming matches on the lawn, and no dramatic interventions from Aunt Karen. The legal document I had posted to the family chat had acted like an institutional disinfectant. Once the extended family saw the raw numbers, the predatory HELOC details, the years of missed payments, and the reality that my parents had been liquidating their own house to buy their luxury cars, the righteous indignation vanished. The aunts and cousins who had called me a monster suddenly went completely silent, embarrassed that they had been used as pawns to protect a fake lifestyle. My father stood on the porch, wrapped in a worn jacket that looked too big for his suddenly slouched shoulders. He watched the movers carry out the heavy mahogany dining table and the ornate crystal chandelier, the very symbols of the debt-free luxury he had used to lecture me for a decade. He looked older, smaller, and entirely emptied of the bulletproof confidence he had once carried. My mother remained inside her parked SUV, her sunglasses on, refusing to look at the house or at me as David and I carried the final boxes of her clothing down the steps. True to our word, David and I had paid for the entire moving company out of our monthly checking account, and we had spent our weekends sorting through their belongings, ensuring they had everything they needed for their new life. They didn't move to a motel, and they weren't thrown onto the street. They are currently settled into a clean, modern 2-bedroom senior rental apartment in a quiet community 40 minutes away. It is a lovely place, but to my parents, it is a prison of reality. They had to sell both luxury vehicles to clear the remaining short sale deficiency with the bank, and my father now drives a modest, 10-year-old sedan that he refuses to park in the front row of the grocery store. Our marriage and our financial future remain completely secure. Yesterday afternoon, David and I sat across from our loan officer at the bank. Because we had protected our down payment, our credit scores were pristine, our assets untouched. We received our formal pre-approval letter for a beautiful 4-bedroom home with a massive backyard for Leo, a home built on structural integrity, discipline, and actual ownership, not a house of cards. My parents still do not speak to me. My mother sends a cold, transactional text message once a week regarding their mail delivery, but the Sunday dinners are gone, replaced by a deep, quiet peace in our own home. My brother still sends occasional, bitter emails from across the country, but his words have no power over me anymore. Looking back at the shattered illusion of my childhood, I realize that the most dangerous thing you can do for the people you love is to become the financial safety net for their vanity. For years, I thought my parents' criticism of my lifestyle meant I was failing at the game of success. I learned the hard way that true wealth isn't about what you can borrow to show the world. It's about what you can actually afford to protect when the world stops looking. Canceling their lifestyle insurance wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of survival. And standing our ground didn't destroy our family. It finally forced us to build one that was real.